Hey guys, welcome back to another doll customizing video. In today's video, I will be sharing with you how I made a Neon Goth inspired doll. After making my Sweet Treats inspired doll, I really wanted to make something completely different to her, so I came up with this idea of a Neon Goth girl. Something odd I also noticed was that this doll kind of completes a series. This Neon Goth girl and my last two videos, which are the Sweet Treats and Sea Monster dolls, all have really interesting hair colors. These three dolls all have my first three color combinations that I ordered from dollyhair.com. I know you guys really like the hair, so I'm excited to continue ordering from dollyhair.com and giving you guys some really interesting hair colors. With that said, if you're new, feel free to subscribe and join me on future doll customizing videos. And other than that, let's go ahead and get started. I didn't want the skin tone of this doll to distract from the main theme, so I decided to go with this Ghoulia doll from Monster High because of her gray skin tone and more serious face mold. The first thing I do to get this doll ready for customization is cut off her hair using a sharp pair of scissors, then I remove her head and pull out the plugs from the inside using some pliers. I also remove her factory face using 100% pure acetone, cotton balls, and a few Q-tips. I also use my acetone to wipe off the paint that is on her hair. I do this because if I don't do it, the paint that I will paint on her head later won't stick and it will begin to crack. I had actually decided to make a goth doll before deciding to make a neon goth doll when I saw this hair color in my hair color box. This hair color combination comes with 3 shades and is in the length long. After picking this hair color, that's when I realized that I had used all my color combinations that I ordered from dollyhair.com. I will be using these paints to repaint her head so that when I reroot her, you can't see her scalp. This is also when I decided to call her Neon Goth because this neon hair was going to be a big part of her design. I also want to quickly note that when I was rerooting this doll hair, there was really only 2 shades that I could notice distinctively. I'm not sure if I really just couldn't tell the difference between 2 of the shades or if I only got 2 shades in the mix. I'm assuming that I didn't receive the color Sour Apple Martini because this color didn't really have that deep green color from these photos. I'm actually not disappointed that I didn't receive the green color if that is the case because I think the neon shade of this color combination would have been thrown off. I also decided to add this white that I had left over from an old reroot just to add a bit more color variation. Now that that's all out of the way, I should say that I was rebooting this doll in order to give her a half up, half down bun look. That top part of her hair is only rerouted on that outside part in order for the bun not to be too thick. Now to secure all those plugs, I use Fabri-Tac glue to squeeze into the inside of her head and use some Q-tips to wipe that around and make sure that I get each plug. After letting the glue dry for at least 24 hours, I reattach her head to her body. Next, I remove her arms and hands and cover her hair and body with fabric and pins so I can spray her with a first layer of Mr. Super Clear. Before I started adding this white to her eye, I actually tried drawing the top eyeliner on the left side of her face, but it looked really weird when I tried to draw a big eye on this face mold, so I decided to go with a more sultry look on this doll. I think her eyes are the smallest eyes that I've ever given a doll when I repainted her face, which is kind of cool. I think it's really different compared to my current style, which are very big eyes and bold lashes. I also decided to give her blue lips, which I do make darker later on, and I decided to add some black shadow to give her a smoky eye look. I use a lime green watercolor pencil to lightly sketch in the shape of her eyebrow. It's a bit difficult to see the shape of her eyebrow on camera, but I pretty much went with the same shape I give all my dolls. I also very lightly blush her forehead and cheeks because I really didn't want to give this doll too much color. I really wanted her to stay simple. I figured that this girl wouldn't wear too much makeup as in blushing and stuff like that, but she would really pay more attention to her lips and eyeshadow. I also use a brown watercolor pencil to define her nostrils. Before spraying her face with a second layer of Mr. Super Clear, I use this Macro Pearl X powder to add a bit of shine to her face. After a second spray of Mr. Super Clear, I use a black watercolor pencil to go over her top eyeliner and add a few eyelashes. I'm a little too zoomed out in this shot, but I simply used a black watercolor pencil and a wet brush to add a crease to her eye. I also added her waterline using a pink watercolor pencil and a brush. Now I am adding her bottom eyeliner. I also used that same black watercolor pencil and brush to add a darker color to the ends of her eyebrows. Even though her hair doesn't have any black in it, this is mainly for her eyebrows to actually stand out against this face up. I also use a gray watercolor pencil and a brush to paint on the shape of her pupil. I decided to draw her pupils off center as if she's looking off to the side because I feel like this adds a bit more of a mysterious look to her face up. At this point, I had also added highlights underneath her eyebrow and to the cupid's bow. I had also added eyelashes to the left side of her face, and on the right side I ended up getting a little too heavy-handed, so I just used some acetone to wipe them off. After spraying her with a third layer of Mr. Super Clear, I outline her iris using black, and I also draw in her pupil. I also use this black to add to the top half of her eye and ombre it into that gray at the bottom half. Using my smallest brush, I paint on little black eyebrow hairs near the inner part of her eyebrow. Her gray eye color didn't really stand out to me, so I decided to switch it to more of a blue color to match her lips, and now I'm adding a few more highlights near the inner part of her eye. Her face up was a little too simple at this point, so I decided to try something new with the Pearl-X powders. I used my brush to wet the inner part of her eyes, and then I laid down some Pearl-X powders to give it a bit of a shine. I think the inner part of her eye looks really nice and shiny, which adds a little bit more detail to her face up. I also used my white pencil to add highlights to her eyelashes. Her face up is nearly complete. The last thing to do is add some eye shines into her eye. I stick with my standard way of drawing eye shines, which is a circle near the top right of her eye and a line near the bottom left part of her eye. This is now her face up complete. The last step to do is spray her with the final layer of Mr. Super Clear so that all of this work can be locked in. Here I am just seeing how her face up goes with her hair color. I really like it. I think her face up provides a really nice contrast to that bright neon color. Moving on to her clothes, there was really only one piece of clothing that I had to make for her. I will be using this thick black material to make her a dress. Before anyone starts wondering, I know there are really different types of goth aesthetics out there. I really felt like this doll needed a more athletic look to her because of the neon colors. It just reminded me of sports, so that is the idea that I went for when I was designing this doll. I will be using this clip as an attachment for her purse, and the slime green fabric I will be using to cover that purse, which I also used in my Clown Girl repaint video. The idea for this goth outfit was more on the athletic side, so I decided to make her a really loose fitting dress with a bag that will be tied around her waist to give it shape. These are the pattern pieces that I came up for her outfit. The only thing that really changed was that the bottom dress hem needed to be twice the length that it is shown in the photos. Also, the bell-shaped sleeve didn't really turn out well because of the fabric that I chose. It was too stiff and it just looked weird. So basically, in the end, I just ended up giving her a regular shaped sleeve. The first step I do is attach the hem to the sleeve, so I just fold the little piece of fabric in half and sew it to the good side of the fabric. Then I go over the fabric with a top stitch in order for the fabric to lie down flat. The left side obviously looks much nicer than the right side does with that top stitch added. The next step I do is attach the back pieces to the front pieces. For that, I lay them good side to good side and sew them together at the shoulders. Once that is complete, I attach the sleeves to the main part of her dress. This part can be a little bit difficult, so I do suggest moving really slowly when sewing the sleeves on. Once those are added on, the next thing to do is sew the dress closed. So I sew along the sleeve area and down the sides of the dress. Make sure that you line up the fabric properly so that you don't miss any areas when you are sewing. Like I mentioned earlier, I had to scrap the whole idea on the bell-shaped sleeve just because it wasn't really lying properly. I'm fairly certain that this doesn't work because the fabric is too thick and too small, that it just doesn't allow the fabric to drape like I wanted it to. So I end up just scrapping that whole idea and sewing across the sleeve as if I'm creating a regular sleeve, and then I just cut off the excess fabric. The fabric that I was going to use to hem the bottom part of the dress was too small, which I miscalculated when I was making the pattern pieces, so I end up just using that to create a hem on the collar. After adding the collar, I also add the bottom hem to the dress and I add a top stitch to that. The last thing to do is finish the dress up by closing it. So for that, I just fold it in half in the back and sew up from the bottom to the top, going about halfway. Here is the dress with the belt around it that I will be using to create the purse that will be around her waist. The last thing to do is add a snap to the back of the dress in order for it to close. I also wanted to give her tights, so I pulled out these tights that I had in my stock box of old doll clothes, and I felt like the left ones gave her a more athletic look, so those were the ones I decided to go with. Moving on to her shoes, I pulled out these 3 pairs of shoes that I was debating on whether or not using. I actually think the white ones were a bit more athletic looking, but I ended up going with the pink ones, mostly because of the cool teeth mold. I really wanted to paint them and make them stand out, and I felt like these shoes might be worn by a goth girl, so I ended up going with those. I will be using white, black, and gray acrylic paint to repaint her shoes. The first thing I do is use my white acrylic paint to paint the teeth marks in the mold. I do this pretty messily because that black paint that I will be painting around her shoe will pretty much cover all of the mistakes. I forgot to record this, but I used that gray paint that I showed earlier and some water to add a bit more detail into the teeth. That way the teeth will stand out and it won't be just a solid white. I also spray the shoes with one layer of Mr. Super Clear just to lock in the colors before using my Liquitex high gloss varnish to add a very nice shine. At this point I had also painted her nails black and used that Liquitex to shine those as well. I bought these string of beads and metal charm at Hobby Lobby. The black beads I was going to tie around the bun that was on her head, but it didn't look right, it didn't match the athletic vibe, so I didn't end up using it. For her hip purse, I cut out these pieces using some lime green felt, and I will be gluing them together using some Fabri-Tac glue. At this point, I really shouldn't call it a purse, it is pretty much a fanny pack. Now that these pieces are glued together, I will be covering them with that lime green fabric that I showed earlier. After covering the pouch with that fabric, I add a snap so that it can open and close, and glue it on to that band that will be going around her waist. I also add the charm using some needle and thread. With that, her fanny pack is complete. After deciding to scrap the idea of the black beads going around her hair bun, I decided to make her a tennis cap because I felt like it fit the athletic vibe, and it was something I have never created before. To make this tennis cap, I sewed a piece of fabric closed on one side, and then I sewed it completely closed to make a tube. The first tube that I made, I used the fabric that I used for the dress, so it was way too thick when I tried to turn it inside out, so I ended up using some black spandex material that I had, and that worked a lot better. I measured the tube enough so that I would be able to add snaps to the back so that it could work properly like a tennis cap would. For the actual bridge part of the cap, I cut out this clear piece of plastic and paint it with some black acrylic paint on the ends just to create a false trim. Here is that part painted on the cap. I didn't want it to stay this matte black, so I ended up painting it with my Liquitex high gloss varnish just to give it more of a glossy look. Here is her tennis cap all complete. I used some Fabri-Tac glue to glue on that plastic onto the tube. When I attached the clear plastic onto the tube, I just pinched the fabric around the plastic so that it would hold on tightly. Now that her accessories are all complete, the last thing I do is gloss her lips and waterline with some Liquitex high gloss varnish before taking some final photos. I am so happy with how this doll turned out. She is really different compared to my other dolls. I really love this photo. She looks so cool in it. Even though I was the one who decided to make a goth inspired doll, this doll definitely did challenge me. Usually I make dolls that are very colorful, so I don't really worry about the styling because I feel like the colors are what stand out. But since this doll really had only 2 colors to make it stand out, I really had to rely heavily on the whole theme and the accessories that I gave her. I don't think I can pick a favorite feature about this doll because I feel like her whole aesthetic comes together with each accessory and idea. For those of you wondering why I didn't do more to her hair, I simply sometimes like leaving the hair how it is because I really like the texture of it and the feel of it. If you guys do want to purchase this doll, she will be available for sale on my Etsy shop as soon as this video goes up. And to complete the trio, my Sweet Treats doll and Sea Monster doll will be up for sale on Etsy as well. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching and joining me on another doll customizing video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you are new and want to watch more of these videos. Let me know what you guys thought of this doll in the comment section below. I do want to say that I really appreciate your guys' comments and suggestions for new ideas. I do read through them and write some down because I really do want to create dolls for you guys. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.